Okay, Chair, so just to let you know that we are live.
Thank you very much. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual consultative arts and culture meeting on the 15th of June 2022. I'm your chair, Councillor Joe Wibley. I'd also like to welcome anyone watching on the meeting via the live streaming. I'd like to remind both members and public attending or watching that this council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to our senior officers until the 31st of October 2022. This is due to concerns relating to COVID risk. Consequently, this meeting is being held remotely and on a consultative basis only, but we will continue to adhere as closely as possible to the procedural rules detailed in our constitution. The meeting can be viewed live online and will be recorded. Please bear this in mind throughout the meeting. Therefore, may I remind colleagues to be careful with their language and that the code of conduct applies throughout our meeting. We reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant disrupting the meeting by whatever means. If you could turn any telephone devices off or onto silent. As this consultative arts and culture meeting is dependent on an internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we're not able to reconnect, we'll consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for details. Please make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Keep points short and do not repeat points that have already been made and do not interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All participants and councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. So we'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone when you hear your name? And when you do so, please confirm by saying present. When you've confirmed you're present, please mute your microphone again. Olivia.
Okay, so Councillor Wibley.
I am present, thank you.
Councillor Brown. Oh, Councillor Brown, are you able to unmute? Oh, okay, I've got a thumbs up there.
Yeah, present.
Okay. Councillor Borough.
Yeah, present.
Councillor Buchan has said he's going to be late. I don't think he's here yet. Councillor Cole. Councillor Davey.
Present.
Councillor de Saram.
Present, thank you, Lethia.
Councillor Hookway.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Johns. Councillor Moulding. Councillor Rylance. Councillor Stephen.
Present, hi.
Councillor Tate. Councillor Whips. And I've had some last minute apologies from Brian Norris. So, Chair, we are quorate.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Agenda item 1 is public speaking, but I believe there's no members of the public wishing to speak.
Correct.
Agenda item 2 is the appointment of the vice chair. I'd like to invite nominations from committee members. If you could put your electronic hands up if you'd like to nominate somebody. We'll discuss a little bit later what that role might entail. Can we have a vice chair, even for one meeting? I might start nominating people.
I'll nominate Councillor Arnott.
No, I'm not on the committee, sadly, Councillor Davey. I'm only observing, although it occurs to me, Chair, that Councillor Hookway has previously performed the role, just saying.
Okay, that's a good point. Councillor Davey, would you be interested in changing who you're proposing for?
Sounds a very good idea. Yeah, I was just going alphabetically.
Excellent. So is that a proposal for Councillor Hookway?
It is, yes.
Do we have a seconder for that? I'll second that from the chair. So, do we have any more proposals? We do not. Okay. Do we need to vote on that still?
Yeah, well, it would just be wise to. And
Yeah. Okay. So could you show with your green ticks or red crosses whether or not if you were in support of Councillor Hookway becoming vice chair?
Okay, so I have 7 green ticks, no red crosses and no abstentions. So that's the vote carried.
Okay.
And we've got Eleanor Rylance joining us now as well.
Okay. Thank you very, very much indeed. Congratulations, Nick. You must
Thank you. Thank you
you
so
must feel
much.
honoured.
Absolutely, I do.
Excellent. Don't let it go to your head, though, sir. Okay. Agenda item 3 and 4 is the minutes of the previous meetings. If anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 20th of January 2022, could you please make those comments by raising your electronic hands? If I have no hands, I will take this as an indication that you're happy that the minutes are accepted. Okay, I see no hands. So thank you very much. The minutes of the previous meeting are indeed accepted. So agenda item 5, apologies. I believe we have a couple which you outlined a second ago. I've had one from Councillor Beach. I don't know if you have by email as well.
Yeah, so we've got Councillor Beach, Councillor Luden and Brian Norris.
Okay. Thank you very much. So agenda item 6, everybody's favourite, declarations of interest. Sarah, is it Sarah?
It is.
No.
Thank you, Chair. So, councillors, when your name is called, please restate your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to. State what exactly the interest is and the specific type of interest that you're declaring, please.
Sarah,
Yes,
sorry,
okay.
just to jump in. I'm just conscious because we have got other councillors from other places. Maybe, I guess you're going to do this step by step. So this will be the East Devon declarations. For those who aren't aware, we have a new code of conduct at East Devon that is causing us to declare different interests. So for other councillors, don't be surprised that this doesn't sound like yours, and we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Anita. So we'll start with you, Chair, Councillor Wibley.
I think the only one I may have isn't an other registrable interest, which is I'm a member of Exmouth Town Council. Other than that, I don't think I have any.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Davey, please.
Yeah, same as Joe. Member of Exmouth Town Council, so that's an affects ORI.
Do you see that is there an item that's relevant to on
Sorry,
this
yes,
agenda?
it's the leisure, the culture strategy.
Yeah.
The whole strategy.
Item 7. Yeah, because parts of it are bound to impinge on Exmouth.
Okay, so are you going to go flowchart out again? Affects our ORI, but on the basis that applying the test, you don't think your judgment is clouded. So you're going to stay.
Yes.
Presumably, given as it's mainly the only item, item on the agenda. Is that what both of you are saying, Councillor Davey as well?
Yes.
So affects NRI, having applied the test that says that no greater.
I'm
input.
not affected to a greater extent than anybody else.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think at this stage that's right anyway, because it's a broad strategy.
Yeah,
I've got the OR, I've got the flow chart in front of me, so I'm working my way through it. So I'm hoping that's right.
Okay, I think that's right. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Councillor De Simon, please.
Well, as Joe and Ollie so expertly explained, I think item 7 for me, as an Exmouth Town Councillor, a non-registrable interest. So yes, I will stay in the meeting, and I think it's non-registrable, whatever. I will stay in the meeting and follow the guidance that Joe and Ollie have taken that
Okay.
as a
Thank
fellow
you.
Exmouth Town Councillor.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you
it
very much.
affects NRI.
Yes.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
No, thank you.
Councillor Hookway, please.
None that I'm aware of, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Johns isn't here, is she? We don't have Councillor Moulding. Councillor Rylance, please. So do we have Councillor Rylance?
We did. It looks like perhaps she's dropped out. So we'll
We
have
lost
to
her.
call her if she comes back in.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's all the East Devon councillors that are
So
members.
So if that's the committee members, so then do we
Yes.
have any other, sorry, this is getting a bit clunky, but any other East Devon district councillors who are participating in the meeting that aren't on the committee? Can you just confirm your interest? So Councillor Arnott, do you have an interest?
None. Thank you.
I love the fact we're all so confident about this. That's all of us. I think that's it then, isn't it?
Okay, so
So
Ellen
then-
Rylance is just joining the meeting again.
Okay. Is Ellen Eleanor's committee?
Yeah,
isn't
she's
she?
just, yeah, she is.
I am here, but my
Do I need
signal
to
is so poor.
Okay. Eleanor, do you have any interest to declare?
No, I don't, Lisa, thank you.
No. Okay. So Councillor Rickson, I can see as well. Do you have any interest to declare?
Only the same as Ollie. It's just that I am also a town councillor, so that's the only effect at all. So it's
okay, and affects NRI then.
Yeah.
Doesn't cloud your judgment. Okay, that's fine.
right.
We've got Councillor Faithful is here.
Yes, I've got nothing. Well, NRI, Ottery Parish Town Council. I don't know where it comes into anything, but yeah.
Okay, so if Ottery were to be impacted by the strategy,
Yeah.
so you could, it's probably unnecessary, I suspect, but you could declare that as an effects NRI that you don't feel your judgment is clouded. It's a strategy at this point, so I think that's probably okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
And we've got
Sarah, Alethea, I'll let you do the
yeah.
any non-EDDC members.
Okay. So Sarah, you
Thank
happy
you,
to go
Anita.
through with the roll
Yes.
call?
Happy to, thank you. So Councillor Brown, please.
Member of Honiton Town Council, nothing that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much. Councillor Borough, please.
I'm a member of Axminster Town Council, but then aside from that, I think I might have other interest. I'm very new to this. Is that I'm also a member of Light Up Axminster, and we're responsible for community events and the Christmas lights in Axminster. Yeah, and a Rotary member. I'm not sure that is one, but yeah. So I think that's the only two that I would be.
Cara, do you know, does your code, and I can see Jill who's handily above you in the list, would your town council code normally require you to declare interests at other people's meetings? The codes vary. It may be that it doesn't anyway. No, getting a no from Jill.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm pretty new. I think
no, that's fine. I think if DSOs, if you just note them, they'd be personal interests, I suspect. Anyway, there's Light Up Axminster is voluntary, isn't it? There's no.
It's voluntary, yeah.
No, that's fine.
I suppose I should probably say as well, I also run the Yachty Party Festival. So although I don't get any monetary back from that, I do that voluntary. It is a registered limited company, but everything goes back into it, if that makes sense. So that might be another one.
So not for profit. I would think if you got onto anything that was relevant to Yachty Party, it might be worth coming out, treating it as a DPI, and coming out, just because the ramifications. The thing to check perhaps with your clerk is whether your code requires you to declare only at your own meetings, or whether it applies to anybody else's. But we could do that for another time.
Lovely. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And next we have Councillor Buchan, please.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Next, Councillor Stephen, please.
Yeah, I'm on Seaton Town Council. I'm not aware of any other elements. Quite new to this as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that's everybody. If I've missed anyone, please can you make yourself known?
Councillor Farrow, Sarah.
Councillor Farrow.
Axminster.
Thank you.
Axminster Town Council, but I have no declarable interests.
Please.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Hand up, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Councillor Arnott.
thanks. So, yes, I think as other people have declared effects NRIs as town councillors, I'll do that for Collerton. And also, very cheekily, just perhaps to because I know she won't be across it, but Councillor Brown, it may be helpful that I think because Honiton Town Council is based in the Beehive, I think that's correct, isn't it? It may be that you also, under the new Code of Conduct, have an unvexed NRI. It's up to you entirely, but just offer that.
So, if I may, Councillor Brown isn't caught by our new code unless they've adopted it, and I'm not aware that any parish or town have adopted our code. They're all still working on the previous code, but it may be worth noting it just for the records.
Okay.
Okay, I've got that. Thank you very much. And I think, did Councillor Johns just join the meeting?
Just joined, yeah.
I did, sorry, I'm late.
Hello, Councillor Johns. So we're just doing the declarations of interest. Can I check, please, if you have any related to this agenda?
I work for South West Academy of Fine and Applied Arts at Kennoway, which is based at Kennoway House.
Okay.
So are you, Councillor Johns, you declare under our new code, have you worked through what impact that has on this strategy, or if it does?
I would assume that if it's anything to do with arts, etc., within East Devon, I've got a pecuniary interest, haven't I? Because I work for an art society, an art charity that does exhibitions all across East Devon.
I think yours is difficult, and I think we had a very quick look at it actually before the meeting. We might need to work through this in more detail. I would suggest if the discussion gets in any way related, so this is a broad brush strategy at the moment. It doesn't. Charlie will be very offended, I suppose, if I say it doesn't have much detail, but it's a broad brush strategy at the moment. So I would suspect there isn't anything that triggers your DPI at the moment. If the discussion heads that way in any shape or form, I would suggest you declare it and leave. But if it stays broad brush and you don't at any point consider that it does affect your directly relates, that it doesn't directly relate to your DPI, I think at this stage that's probably sufficient, and we may need to work through yours separately.
Yeah, I think mine's going to be quite a difficult one on this forum, just because I work for an art society that's a charity and is based within East Devon.
It might be. It's got to be directly related to the item you're discussing, needs to be directly related to your interest. And I would suggest, as long as this is broad, then you're probably okay.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Unless you want to take the absolutely cautious view, in which case you would declare it as a DPI and then you'd be gone.
Yeah, well, that's my only concern, because obviously our charity does do work alongside the Thelma Hubert Gallery, which obviously is run by East Devon. So that is my concern. I have had this concern before, but obviously with the new register of interest and stuff, what I don't want to do is bail on a meeting today, which may leave us not quorum, but in the long run, it may be that they have to look for another councillor because of the job that I do.
Yeah, I think as long as it stays vague and this is an early strategy, I think you're probably fine at this point. But I would suggest you and I'm not staying, but I would suggest you leave if it starts to get directly relating to. Okay. And we'll perhaps have a chat afterwards and just work through it.
Yeah, that's perfect. So if everyone can stay vague, that'd be great.
Oh, vague is okay. Councillor Brown, is your hand up?
Yeah, sorry about that. I just thought I am the
Honiton Town Council representative on the Honiton Community Complex, the Beehive. I don't know if that comes into it.
Is that noted? Oh, no, that was another thing to do with the Beehive, wasn't it? That was the town council.
Yes, I'm the sort of representative. Well, I'm a director of the Honiton Community Complex.
Right. I mean, I'm happy to continue now, but is this something, Anita, that we can sort?
Yeah.
It seems like there's some quite complicated issues there.
I think this is back to keep as long as it's a high level strategy or broad brush strategy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use the word vague. Then I think you're probably okay. The directorship, I think, might be an issue, but we need to look at it in the context of the Honiton Town Council Code and whether it even requires the member to declare at meetings that aren't their own meetings. So our code defines meetings as our meetings in terms of interest. Theirs may be the same.
I normally disclose a pecuniary interest at Honiton.
Yeah, in which case, if this mattered and if this matter directly relates to your pecuniary interest, you didn't ought to take part in it. But I think as you've got only a one item agenda and it is high level, I think it's your call, Councillor Brown. But I see, without checking your code, I can't even tell you whether you have to declare at a meeting that isn't your own town council.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Have to take a view.
We're going to have to. So if we can all sort of contact each other afterwards and have that chat in time for next time, that would be great. Okay. So we'll now move on to agenda item 7, the East Devon culture strategy, big fanfare, which is from 2022 to 2031. Just before we move on, I'd like to say that we've had a lot of work, and I'd like to thank Charlie and Ruth and Holly and their teams for the work that's gone into this. We are at a point now where it's almost at the stage where we're ready to adopt it. So any kind of fine tinkering, it's that boat has sailed to a certain extent, and there has been extensive consultation gone into this. So whilst we're here to look at it and to scrutinise it, in terms of changing wording here and changing little bits here, we are kind of beyond that point. Just before Charlie speaks, so I will now hand over to Charlie, who will say a few words and begin a marvellous presentation.
Well, actually, you've oversold me, Chair. It's Holly that's going
Holly,
to.
isn't it?
It is.
Holly,
so I'd love to take credit, and also because we spent quite a lot of time with the declarations of interest, I'm going to say no more and pass to Holly.
Holly.
Great. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And yeah, thank you very much for having me today. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Hang on a sec. Hopefully. No, that's not working. That's this one. I beg your pardon. Hang on, just give me a moment. Why is that not working? Screen 1. There we are. Not screen 2. There we are. So yeah, my name's Holly Smith-Charles, and I've been the lead consultant with there's been a group of 3 of us from FEI working closely with Charlie and Ruth and lots of people from East Devon District Council, but across the whole district over the last few months to help shape this strategy. So hopefully it won't be too vague. But what we're trying to do is set out a vision for the next 10 years for culture and to come up with some practical plans for how we might go about delivering that. So I'm going to just talk through some slides just to give you a summary of the presentation that we shared before the meeting. Hang on a sec, it should work. So the brief, we've been appointed by East Devon District Council and working closely with the Arts and Culture East Devon, the ACE network as well, to develop a shared 10-year vision for culture in East Devon and a cultural strategy that sets out some goals, principles and objectives that reflect local needs and ambitions. So what we've focused on is a sort of big vision that we hope everyone can buy into, but also looking at quite where East Devon District Council can have the most practical and targeted kind of effective impact on culture over the coming years. We're also developing a practical delivery plan, which will include activities and outputs, milestones, a monitoring framework, and some outline plans for resourcing and funding. And I will hand back to Charlie to talk a bit more about that afterwards. And throughout the process, it's been really consultative, and it's been great kind of meeting people both online and in person to kind of build trust and local ownership, and critically partnerships as well to deliver the strategy. So this is the work that we've been doing. There's been three kind of main aspects to it: desk research and some primary research as well, mapping what's out there already, and there's some considerable strengths within the region, so there's a lot to build on, and then consultation, both through one-to-one interviews, small workshops, and a public survey as well. And over 500 people from across East Devon have been involved in the process throughout February and March. So this is just something I want to show. It's a snapshot. It's not everything, but this has come out of our mapping, and I think what it shows is the real strength actually within the district. Obviously, it's a rural district with a number of towns and parishes, countryside and coastline. There's a real mix of places, as you know. But what's interesting is that there is a breadth of activity, both in terms of the types of cultural activity, the art forms, museums, village halls, touring theatre. So lots going on for people to either take part in or to watch, but also it's geographically quite well spread as well. So there's, for example, there's 7 multi-arts performing arts spaces and theatres across the district. So yeah, it's quite well served, I think, in terms of lots of different areas. So from all of this research and consultation and the mapping exercise, we pulled together an evidence-based report and a SWOT analysis. This one's a bit wordy, so I won't talk through all of it, but it just gives you a sense of some of the kind of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So as I said, this eclectic mix, and there's a really distinctive offer that identifies the kind of quirkiness and uniqueness of the different parishes and towns across East Devon. The natural environment, of course, is wonderfully inspiring, and there's a real opportunity there to kind of link with culture. There are loads of opportunities to take part and volunteer, and there are networks in place such as the South West Museums Development Group to help support some of that, and the ACE network, as I said, that's emerged in the last couple of years. In terms of weaknesses, I think that a lot of the organisations are very, very small and under-resourced, and that means it can be quite difficult to put in place big changes. So I hope that the themes and the actions that we're suggesting reflect some of that, and the need to kind of recognise that some capacity across all of them is necessary to drive change. Opportunities to meet and network and affordable workspaces came up quite a lot. So there's some suggestions for how that could be tackled. And it came up quite a lot that marketing and promotions can feel quite fragmented. So in terms of pitching the district's offer as a whole year round, more could be done to support that. And again, the need for more opportunities for young people, both as participants to take part in culture, but also beyond that, sort of talent development pathways and skills is another area for growth. And specifically Exmouth cropped up a few times as perhaps the offer seen as disjointed. It might not be that that's the case, but that was certainly the perception that we picked up on, and that there could be more could be done to kind of build the Exmouth offer. So that's the SWOT analysis. So yeah, so what we've tried to do is pull together a vision that we hope reflects both what exists currently, but also the potential of East Devon. So this is the vision statement. Our vision for East Devon is to be a vibrant cultural ecosystem whose distinctive communities and outstanding natural environment are enhanced and enriched through creativity, curiosity, and collaboration. And their mission statement, our mission is to balance the unique identities, independence and quirks of each East Devon community with the need to work together on ambitious shared initiatives that transcend any one organisation, art form or place. And this will include partners from within and beyond our district. in terms of the values, so the idea behind the values is that these kind of underpin the strategy. So when you're looking at any of the themes or the objectives, the work programs, what we've tried to do is ask ourselves, does it help build resilience? Is it reflecting the desire to be collaborative? Does it reflect the diversity of East Devon's offer and of contemporary society? And critically, does it connect with nature? Does it support the goal of carbon neutrality? Does it help to inspire and engage people with nature? So these are the 4 values that we hope underpin all of the themes that I'm going to run through in just a moment. I just wanted to do a quick update. We circulated version 3.0. Things are moving quite quickly. I've been working, since we sent this out to you, I've been working with the tourism strategy consultant to make sure that we align with some of the themes that are coming out from her work. So I've slightly reworded the 3rd theme, which I'll talk through when I get there. And we've also had it reviewed by the climate change officer within East Devon District Council. And again, she made some really practical suggestions about how we can strengthen the link between the culture strategy and the climate change strategy, so that they're a bit more aligned. So again, I'll just point out where I've added some details in there about training and policies, that sort of thing, to make sure that they're really, really closely linked. So it's great that this work is all happening at the same time. And again, just to reiterate that Charlie and Ruth have been really, really helpful at linking us across different departments in East Devon District Council and making sure that things aren't really joined up. So here are our themes. What we've got, just before I start, I just want to say we've got 8 themes in total. 5 of them are really around delivery of culture. And then themes 1 to 5 and the kind of practical what we're going to do. And then themes 6, 7 and 8 are much more about how we're going to do it. So looking at strengthening the sector and perhaps the skills or the networks that need to underpin it in order for the first 5 themes to be successful. Again, we've some of the themes apply to the whole district. Some of them are targeted at particular places. Some of them are for people of all ages. Some of them are targeted at young people in particular. And I think what we've tried to do is to recognise where there are particular opportunities or challenges or gaps in provision. And that's where you'll see that things either are perhaps broad and across the whole district or across different art forms, or it might be that we've particularly focused in on a particular art form or place or whatever. So here we are. I won't read through all of this because this is in the papers that were circulated beforehand, but hopefully this is quite a good summary for reference. So theme 1 is around strengthening and supporting the people that do. So there's a real recognition that there is this unique community-led cultural organisations across the whole district. And that really enhances the high quality of life and well-being in East Devon. So this is 2 actions and 5 work programmes that we hope will help to strengthen them. I should say about the timescales, short timescale we think are things that could be implemented quite quickly, so kind of 3 to 6 months sort of timescale. So for example, recognising and rewarding volunteering. I suspect some of that happens already, and so it's looking at kind of just quite straightforward ways that volunteers across East Devon can be recognised. Medium term is something that's perhaps a bit longer, that might need extra resource or partnership working, so sort of looking more at up to a sort of 4 to 5 year timescale. And then you'll see there's other actions that are sort of medium to long term, and again that's things that are more complex or that might require more partnerships, more inward investment, more fundraising, and so those are things we're trying to look at that long 10-year timescale as well. Theme 2 is to protect and enhance the natural environment. And here we've said that we want to establish East Devon as an innovator and regional beacon of culture-led environmental protection, enhancement and activism. And to look at both in terms of inspiring people and really connecting people with the areas of outstanding natural beauty and the coastline, and connecting across disciplines. And stuff's already happening, but making that a bit more coherent and year round. And also looking at sustainable event management. So one suggestion from the climate change officer, for example, was around a sustainable events guide and perhaps setting standards for looking at the environmental performance of festivals. So that might be ones that are delivered by the council, but also other festivals across the district. Theme 3 is around cultural tourism. And the goal here is to establish new cultural products, partnerships and promotional activity to mutually benefit and grow the creative and visitor economies. And so this is, we've suggested a couple of things here around collaborating with the tourism offer and linking with the tourism strategy, in particular, looking at what's known as the shoulder season. So beyond the peak season, what role could culture play to attract different types of visitors or additional visitors beyond the summer season? And so an obvious example there is around, say, visual arts and the exhibitions programme that happens year round, for example, at the Thelma Hulbert Gallery, or you've got sort of clusters of galleries in places like Beer. So looking at how we can kind of strengthen that offer and link that with tourism and the promotions that happen and the packages that are sort of developed as part of a tourism management strategy. And again, linked to this is around promoting major events and making sure that those jewels in the crown, if you like, are promoted really well, and especially where they're beyond the peak season. So you've got, for example, Budley Literary Festival. It takes place in September, for example. So you've got a really nice opportunity there to draw visitors in beyond that peak summer season. So that's that set of actions. Theme 4 is around creative enterprise and skills. And here we want to build the inspiring talent development pathways for the current and next generation of East Devon creatives. So this is around looking at opportunities for young people to learn and apply their skills within the creative industry. And loads of stuff has come up here around training and how we can join with partnerships. So there's Devon have a local cultural education partnership that it would be great to have some kind of direct East Devon representation on that. A youth forum, for example, connected to ACE, but particularly targeting young creatives and activists. So to really make young people engage more with the kind of cultural scene within their district. And then looking longer term, more ambitious projects, for example, a programme of apprenticeships. And so the apprentices might be, given that there's lots and lots of small organisations, it's too much for any one organisation to organise a whole programme. But perhaps if there's some central resource that could coordinate, you know, an apprentice in a museum over here, or an apprentice in a theatre here, so that there's a cluster of apprentices across the district. And then the second action is around utilising empty or underused spaces. So there was a comment quite a lot within the workshops that having more opportunities to use empty spaces, use empty shops as galleries and workshop space, rehearsal spaces, that more could be done for that. So that's where that second action has come from. Theme 5 is new places for culture. And here what we've said is that we want to ensure that all East Devon residents, especially children and young people, can experience high quality culture and creativity in their local areas. So this is quite place-based, sort of looking specifically, and two key things have come out. And again, this is because there's some work happening around this at the same time. So Exmouth Cultural Quarter, for example, and linking, there's some work going on at the moment around placemaking in Exmouth. And so we want to make sure that culture is part of that conversation, and looking at kind of auditing what the current provision is and helping to shape a vision and delivery plan for the future. And then looking at the role of Exmouth Pavilion. A few people talked about a creative hub, a place for young people, and so we've put that in as a potential suggestion for medium to long term for the role of the Exmouth Pavilion. And then again, we got lots of comments about the new housing developments that are taking place, and the new towns and communities that are emerging across the district. And so looking at how we can work with developers and the local plan to make sure that cultural provision, that might be the physical infrastructure, but also activities and opportunities are built into those plans. And I'm going to really whiz through these because I'm looking at my clock. But we've got three that are around developing how you'll make those things happen. So the first is around connectivity and supporting the sector. And we think we had overwhelmingly positive feedback about ACE, which only started during the pandemic. So building ACE, looking at its leadership and its kind of business plan, perhaps establishing networks of communities within ACE. So this one is all around building that network for creative practitioners and artists across the district. Theme 7 is around cultural leadership. And there's a role there for the district council and its partners to drive forward the strategy and provide that leadership. And there was an appetite for that through our workshops and consultation. So this is one idea is around establishing what's known as a cultural compact. So that's a partnership between local authorities, but also artists and practitioners and arts organisations, colleges and education providers. It might be your kind of natural environment partners. So bringing in all the people that can help drive forward the strategy and provide that kind of strategic leadership group over the next decade. I'm going to hand over to Charlie in just a moment to talk about the cultural producer role. And this is a critical role to kind of act as a central hub, a linchpin, if you like, for driving forward the strategy, looking at the more detailed plans and taking it forward. And then finally, theme 8 is around capturing value. So we want to ensure that there's continuous learning and improvement by monitoring and evaluating the change that creativity and culture has on people in place. And there's lots of tools. The Arts Council have a number of tools that we could look at for assessing social and economic impacts, but also around health and well-being, and the value of culture for kind of environmental change and across organisations. And on that note, my very last slide, we've been thinking about a set of indicators that we could use. So again, it's quite, I'm not going to say vague, but they're quite broad brushstrokes for what is it that we want things to look like in a decade's time. So these are some suggestions of the indicators we could use to track progress. So for example, 2/3 of residents view East Devon's cultural offer as high quality, interesting, fun, relevant, accessible, well promoted. 2/3 of children and young people feel that they have ample opportunities to take part in cultural and creative activities. We could track the number and diversity of visitors to cultural events, and also look at the level of investment. The baseline at the moment is relatively low for the investment in arts and museums and heritage. So can we track, is there progress against that? Is more money being brought in through grants or philanthropy to grow the sector? So that, in a slightly potted but summary, is the strategy that we've put before you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much indeed, Holly. That's really interesting. And I think in terms of this committee, just looking at it there again, I think themes 7 and 8 is something that this committee will certainly have a role to play in. And we'll have a look at that later. Charlie, will you tell us about the cultural producer, please?
Can I take that, Chair, for item number 9, because I'm going to reference it specifically there, just because there are a number of issues around resourcing, so I can package it up under 9. And if you can just sort of take any sort of general questions on the strategy.
Yeah,
so.
No, that's fine.
Is that all right, Chair?
Fine. Yep, that's cool. So do we have any questions from non-members, first of all? Okay, I see no hands up. Do we have any questions from inside the committee? Oh, Councillor Rexton, sorry. Have you put your hand down, Councillor Rexton?
Sorry, this isn't a suggestion, it's more a comment on theme 3. I'd just like to report that we had a Jazz and Blues Festival for 4 days in Sidmouth, which is brand new. And this in itself proves that culture is so important, because the feedback, informal, that I had today is that it was very successful and it contributed to the local economy in terms of hotels and restaurant business. In fact, it was quite noticeable that the town was busier, and they also want to hold the event again next year. So this does in itself prove that if you can put the events on, if they're the right sort of calibre, then people will come.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I was going to ask how it went, actually. Okay, do we have any more committee non-members? Okay, do we have any questions from within inside the committee? Oh, Councillor Barrow. Cara?
Sorry, I was just grabbing my toilet, my tissue, I think.
That's fine. Oh, so do you have a question or no? Okay. Okay. Do we have any comments from inside the committee, or is that all perfectly clear and wonderful? Excellent. Holly, you've done such a good job.
No, thank you all very much for listening. That's yeah, I think it's a really exciting next step.
No, absolutely, and it's very, very clear and very easy to understand, which I think these things need to be, so we can sell it to the public. I think yeah, so we have some recommendations. Councillor Johns, sorry, I've just seen your hand up.
That's all right, Joe. I just needed to declare an interest in Kenaway House, as it was mentioned, because that's where I'm based 2 days a week. It's not it's just a personal interest. And yes, the Jazz Festival went down an absolute storm.
Brilliant.
But I can just declare a personal interest in that, as I'm based here 2 days a week with the job that I do. Thank you.
Okay. I think the strategy remains at a sort of, I won't use the vague word, at a high enough level for you to be absolutely fine with the recommendations coming up. That's fine. So, okay, so we'll move to those recommendations now. So the recommendation is that the Arts and Culture Forum note the significance of culture to the district and the importance of supporting recovery from the impact of the COVID pandemic. Endorses the culture strategy 2022 to 31 to reflect the new ambitions and opportunities to expand the arts and cultural offer of East Devon, with a view to recommending to Cabinet that it supersedes the culture strategy of 2017 to 21. And finally, that we endorse the culture strategy's proposal to provide additional resources to support the delivery of the strategy action plan, and that the Cabinet recommend to Council the funding for a cultural producer role. I think we should probably, just having read that, we should probably take these the first two recommendations on this, and then after Charlie has spoken a little bit later, we'll take the third recommendation. Does that seem right, Alethea, do you think? Because Charlie hasn't actually spoken to this recommendation yet.
Yeah, if that's how you want to do it, that's absolutely.
I think that's so. So we're voting just on the first of the two recommendations in the agenda. They are in the agenda, aren't they?
I mean, you've got a section about resourcing it, haven't you, in the report?
Yeah. So I think after we've had that, so if we take the first two recommendations in the report, and we will take the third one regarding the cultural producer role, if we do that after Charlie's spoken to it later.
Okay.
So are you able to take a vote, Alethea, now then?
Yeah, so obviously committee members want to vote using their green ticks for yes, red crosses for no, and raise a hand for abstentions. So Chair, I can see 8 green ticks, no abstentions and no votes against. So that would be to carry those two recommendations forward.
Thank you very much indeed, committee. A very quietly momentous moment. Well done. Okay, thank you. So we now move to agenda item 8, the steering the development of the culture strategy, which will be Charlie, I believe.
Thanks, Chair, and also thanks very much, Holly. Great job there. Brilliant. Together very neatly. Okay, just as a point of reference, I just wanted to make the ACE Forum members aware that the production of the strategy was overseen by a wide group of creative arts practitioners. This included representatives from the tourism sector, the voluntary and academic sector, and also from ACE Forum itself, and was chaired by Councillor Arnott, the leader of the council. The terms of reference I've asked Alethea to attach, just so I could reassure forum members that due diligence has been followed throughout the contract process. I think it's very important. And the steering group was set up to help FEI, the consultants, with sense checking the draft strategy and ensuring it fitted well with the purposes of the brief. And also the priorities that are identified that came out of the public consultations and workshops that were held over the last 2 or 3 months were correctly informed into the strategy. So it's that sort of process of just keeping it under review, a certain amount of scrutiny, just sort of challenging Holly and her team just to make sure that the key issues were picked up. The steering group met twice, and the comments have been fed into the final draft document. From my perspective, and I hope Holly feels the same, that the group's been extremely helpful in contributing to a number of thought-provoking debates and discussions, and I hope has enabled the strategy in the forum's view to be reflective of East Devon's cultural priorities. So I just wanted that as a point of reference, Chair, so that forum members were aware. Okay, I'm happy to move on to the resource issue if there's no questions on that.
If you move on to that, and then yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so moving on to item number 9, resourcing the strategy. I think it's really important that the strategy and its action plan are not only embedded in the council plan's priorities where it's identified, but it's now a focus for new activities flowing from the action plan. This inevitably will mean that additional resources will be required to deliver the many programs and activities identified in the strategy. And there are a number of avenues to explore here. The identification of funding schemes, developing new collaborative partnerships to enable joint working, and also creating additional staff resources to take the strategy forward. So if I just kick off with the first of those, the funding schemes identified. So the one that we've been looking at very currently is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. You have the details there in your pack. There's a cultural intervention under the Communities in Place theme. We have literally just submitted a project concept proposal to deliver a 3-year cultural projects programme that focuses specifically on the strategy's theme 1, which is strengthen and support people that do. That's page 27 in the agenda, which has a focus on supporting, as Holly said, our volunteer networks in the cultural sector, as well as the work of the ACE network. I mean, there's a lot more beyond that, but that's just a very neat summary of theme 1. The second area to look at in terms of funding stream is the Cultural Development Fund. I think this round is round 3 that's just been announced by Arts Council England, and its focus is on accelerating growth in high-performing and innovative creative cultural sectors with economic and social outputs. This focusing really on new jobs being created, safeguarding existing jobs, and a number of businesses and organisations supported, participants trained, etc. So a lot of very hard economic factors there that need to be met when submitting a bid. As with a number of these things, a bit like with the Shared Prosperity Fund, Chair, the expression of interest is due on Friday the 29th of July, so we're really up against it. I mean, it's a really good fit here for emerging themes in the strategy, such as theme 5, New Places for Culture, which is page 32 in the report pack. The ability for us to meet the deadline, as I said, is very, very challenging in terms of providing all the details required. Just to give you a flavour of that, we've got to, and this is by the 29th of July, consider a minimum 15% match funding. So if we're applying for the maximum amount of 2 million, we need to find at least 300,000 in match funding from public and private sources with a minimum of 50% cash. We need to meet a minimum REBA stage 1, which is in the expression of interest, and then follow with a full feasibility study, which also must be completed by the time we submit the full application, which is mid-November. And all capital match funding must be confirmed by the time the full application is submitted. So as you can see, that is quite a considerable ask. And alongside that, we need to put together a consortium of partners for delivery. So I think the view probably is that this one's come a little bit too early for us, though I think Holly's made us aware that there's hopefully going to be a round 4 of the Cultural Development Fund in 2023. I just need to check with Holly after I've finished my summary if that's correct. Sometime next year, but that's still to be confirmed. But it feels that this is a real biggie and requires a lot of movement right now with a clearly identified project, and I'm not sure we're there at the moment. But I just wanted to give forum members a sense of the opportunities that are out there. So if we don't go with this round, then I think we'd be very keen to go with round 4, which sort of leads very neatly onto the final area, which is around East Devon District Council's budgets and the resourcing of the strategy. So this has been clearly identified with the need of a cultural producer, which is page 26 in the agenda pack. And as Holly's already identified, the cultural producer will act as a coordinator and enabler for taking forward the actions in the strategy. I think it goes without saying this role is absolutely pivotal to the work with all our external partners to bring forward funding bids, develop new creative partnerships, and work closely with all our communities to help develop a range of projects and initiatives. The role is also critical in taking the strategy from being a set of ambitions, excellent ambitions that they are too as well, into tangible and identifiable actions on the ground. And that's to obviously mitigate against the accusation that it's another strategy that sits on the shelf. And just going back to again reiterate what Holly said, this is a 10-year strategy, and many of the activities identified will be delivered over this time span, and we need to carefully prioritize the work of the role. As you know, there could be a sense that the post holder, if we're able to secure it, could be overwhelmed very quickly with expectations. So it needs to be carefully planned. So that leads us to the final recommendation in the report, that really to take this forward, we do need to identify the need for a cultural producer role to take the actions and activities identified in the action plan forward. Otherwise, we will struggle with our current level of capacity and resource internally to achieve that. And that's not to denigrate. I mean, Ruth and the TH team do an amazing job with a very small team. And I think it's fair to say that, you know, with the post, if we're fortunate to secure it, sitting within Ruth's team, will benefit from that support, and we'll really be able to take on a number of these actions, you know, working very closely, collaborating with the team. So that's where we're at, and I think it's important that this is discussed within the forum, because it will be a recommendation that's going to go forward within the cabinet report. And I welcome, Chair, the views of the forum about not just the cultural producer role, but also about the funding opportunities that have been identified. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Okay, so we have questions from, we'll go to Councillor Arnott first, and then we'll come inside the committee. Councillor Arnott.
Thanks very much, Joe. So I think it's about, Charlie, it's about 18 months, Nick will remember, something like that ago, that the idea came up. Well, my idea, go on, let's say it. He said boastfully that we needed a portfolio holder covering culture, sports, leisure and tourism. And we've got Nick, and really valuable that we've got him here. And that then, in essence, I think encouraged officers to then see how much this administration would back this. There were two key things we had to bear in mind. First of all, on a culture strategy and a tourism strategy, they have to have an economic rationale. So we couldn't, I know it sounds Philistine, but we couldn't just do it if it didn't have a provable economic output at the end of the day, much as, you know, one's in favour of the subsidised sector and all of that. So the work that Holly and her team have done in analysing and capturing the entire arts picture, the landscape in East Devon, has been brilliant, absolutely invaluable. That's there for us to know forever. And I was struck today, I happened to be looking at the Octagon in Yeovil, and seeing the kind of arts and culture output that comes from there. Admittedly, it's a 600 plus seater venue, but what a locus it is for arts and culture activity for a huge part of Somerset. And then when you think of Exeter, it's self-evident that they've got all sorts of arts provision there as well. In East Devon, we've got these fantastic outcrops, bits and bobs, stuff, which is wonderful, but it would benefit, I believe, from being brought together. The idea that this analysis by Holly and the work with Charlie and Ruth has brought forward, that we have a cultural producer to do this, to be paid for by the district council, I welcome enormously. Obviously, I'm hugely predetermined. It will come to cabinet, where it will be no surprise. I'll certainly vote for it, and I would hope our cabinet would do as well. But I want to point the forum towards what Councillor Rickson said, Marianne, earlier, about what happened last weekend at the Sidmouth Jazz Festival. And I was over there, and it was rocking. It was packed, and people were spending money, and the level of attainment in purist arts terms, in terms of jazz, was also extraordinarily high. And there are many examples of this already. You, Chair, I know, won't be embarrassed if I mention that at noon on Saturday, you were a lead act at the Pride Festival in Exmouth, and I urge all of the people here to come along. There you go, Joe. We've got the first 3 or 4 in the crowd, I think. But this is essential. And what we have to be careful of, and it can be presented like this by a Philistine element, and I'm sure it probably will be, is, oh, blimey, you're having to close the bogs, you're having to charge for car parks, how can you afford this? These are utterly discrete and different subjects, but I'm just warning the forum that is where this will go, because that is what the Philistine element always do when any initiative regarding the arts comes forward that requires even the small amount of money that this will do. So, yeah, thanks, Chair. That's not really a question, is it? It's just more a statement. No, but
it's
there we go. But thank you so much to you for chairing this forum, but also for all the members of the forum, and in particular the people who've produced the analysis and our officers. Thank you.
Absolutely. I completely agree, and I think it's important when it comes to a, sort of from a PR side, that we're clear about where funding for various things comes from, and if something comes from a shared prosperity fund, it's important to say so, because you can't pay for toilets with a shared prosperity fund. And also thank you for the advert, Councillor Arner. I appreciate that. I need all the help I can get. Where are we? So, Councillor Buchan, Colin.
Thank you. For Charlie, this is with the need for funding to secure push the strategy forward. Does he see the role of cultural producer as essential to putting the strands together to get this funding? Is that how he sees the role of the cultural producer? Because we need the money, as you rightly said, you can't pay for toilets with this fund, but we can get the cultural aspect. Does he see that as a pivotal role of the cultural producer, or more complex than that?
Chair, if I may, yeah, I can respond absolutely 100%. I see the cultural producer. I mean, if we are fortunate enough to get the Shared Prosperity Fund through and our specific, what they're calling intervention on the cultural projects programme over the 3 years, we're going to need that resource to sort of drive it forward. It's a bit chicken and egg, horse and cart, whatever you want to say it. What we do have other funding streams that are coming to us very quickly around culture, placemaking, and as Councillor Arnott said, around linking up with cultural tourism, etc. We just need to be able to be in a position to react to those quickly, using the fantastic evidence base of the strategy to then submit our applications, so we can tap into these funds. And we haven't even mentioned, I haven't mentioned the Arts Council and the funding programs they've got. It's absolutely of critical priority that they start to prioritise us in East Devon as an area for investment and support going forward. And I see the role of the cultural producer working with Ruth and her team of bringing that together. So it's on the cultural producer role will help to unlock the potential. I think that's what I'm saying. Councillor Buchan.
Cool. Thank you very much, Charlie. Councillor Hookway. Nick.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, feeding on really from what Councillor Arnott was saying and also what Charlie was saying, I think it's important to note that there has been a real growth in cultural activities. Certainly when I joined this council in 2019, the Thelma Gallery was a rather shady, quiet existence. It has grown considerably and it has achieved some quite remarkable things with the types of exhibitions that it has held, and we now need to develop that work, and I think this cultural strategy is the absolutely ideal vehicle to help us to do that. I also think it is absolutely crucial that we link in with the other strategies such as the tourism. We've already had meetings with people in hospitality who are extremely keen to work with us and cultural producers, so cultural suppliers really, who are going to provide the incentive for people to come and visit us, and that is absolutely critical. And the cultural producer role, I think, will be absolutely critical in gaining and developing these programs further. And the other final thing is to add about the Arts Council. The Arts Council are very keen to help us in the long term, but before we do anything else, we have to have our strategy, and the vision of that strategy is absolutely essential. And I think this particular strategy that's now been developed by Holly and her colleagues is absolutely spot on, and I'm really glad that you're supporting it. Thank you very much for that. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nick. Councillor De Sarum.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much, Chair. Charlie, a very good presentation. Likewise, Holly, that was very, very informative. Now, earlier on in your presentation, Charlie, you touched on the issue of new jobs being created. And I note that we've heard a very excellent report on the reasons for why we'd have a cultural producer. My question, Charlie, is do you think that the cultural producer role will lead to more cultural jobs and other sort of associated jobs being created in all towns, both in Exmouth and all the way from Exmouth to, say, to Axminster, for example? Because I would then strongly believe this is a good selling point as to why we would have the role if obviously more jobs of a different variety are to be created. So I wouldn't like to describe myself as a cultural Philistine. I would put myself in a financially prudent councillor's position, and I would welcome your comments on this, Charlie, to be guided by you. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Through the Chair, thanks. Bruce, yes, I touched on the cultural development funds being exactly the sort of fund that can unlock those sorts of areas around job creation, supporting the local economy by investing in the sort of capital elements that then unlocks opportunities to then create jobs and prosperity that comes from it. It's those very sort of generic economic sort of terms, but you need someone to be able to pull together that bid, to be able to pull together the partnership, to identify where the match funding is coming from and the specific economic outputs. I'm not saying the cultural producer will do that solely on their own, Bruce. That will be working very closely with Andy Wood's team in particular, and also Tim Child's team, so that we ensure that we've got all the right evidence to put forward a very ambitious programme. Because I think it's fair to say that a number of these funding streams that are coming to us from government are looking at placemaking and culture, and we need to be in a position to capitalise on that. So yes, I would hope, because those are going to be some of the key indicators of the success of the project, will be identifying jobs. So it's quite sort of matter of fact in that sense, you know, in that we have to be very clear about, well, if we are bidding, say, 2 million, well, how's that going to impact on the local economy? How many jobs are going to be created? So rather kind of long-winded but an important kind of response to that one, Bruce.
Thanks, Charlie. Very, very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Councillor Davey. Ollie.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, I should mention that while Sidmouth was rocking, Exmouth was also rocking, because we had our own festival, which had, do you remember the figure, Joe? I think it was...
I'm not sure, no.
No, we certainly had over 5,000 people there per night. I think it was around 7,000 a night, so around 20,000 people attended the festival over the weekend. So it was hugely successful, and a lot of people did pretty well out of it, including, I understand, some of the local traders as well. Yeah, there's always a bit of a difference of opinion in the arts community between those who don't want it to be seen in kind of hard-headed terms, and those who accept that we have to justify the place of the arts as an economic entity. And I have no shame in pointing out the value of the arts sector to the local and national economy, because I think it's often overlooked. And while Holly was presenting there was just a little niggling doubt going through my mind of, yeah, this all sounds fantastic, but who's going to deliver it? Because I've sat in so many meetings where people go, this is the vision, this is what we're going to do. And then you think, yeah, but who's going to do it? And I hope I've understood correctly, and Charlie will put me right if I'm wrong, but I presume that the main role of the cultural producer is going to be to see that strategy through, ensure that we're on track, ensure that we're covering all the bases in it, and all those lovely targets and themes that you've got there. So I feel that we do need somebody with an oversight of the whole thing, who can check what's going on and pull it all together. So I'm hoping that you can confirm that's what that role will entail.
I can, Ollie, indeed, yes.
But
yeah, I would say, Chair, just on that role can't work in isolation. One of the challenges we've got, and Ruth and I'll be working on internally, is to ensure there's real join up, with other key services, be it those who can unlock, currently the economic development team working on the Shared Prosperity Fund, Levelling Up Fund, etc. And then working with, I'd say, Andrew Hancock's team, the street scene, and their events team, that we've got real join up and understanding what we're trying to do. So the culture producer cannot work in isolation of other internal services, as well as obviously working very hard with external partners. There's a job to be done internally as well to make sure that we've got real synergy going on organisationally. So that's going to be a challenge in itself, but you need someone to be able to do that, to be the sort of enabler or the conduit for that.
Thank you very much, Charlie. We'll take the 3 hands that we have up now, and then we'll move on to the recommendation that we didn't vote on earlier on. Councillor Arnott, Paul, is that an old hand, or is that completely?
It's a new hand, Joe. But I'll be very quick. There'll be jazz hands. So very quickly. So it's interesting. So I can see Jill Farrow there from Axminster, Chair of Axminster Town Council. So I was just picking up on Councillor Desaram's point, really. So this is a really interesting case in point. I mean, I think, Jill, you've got Francis Rossi playing in the town hall soon, haven't you? Which is kind of amazing in many ways. So Axminster as an entity, so it's in the far east, so to speak, has got this microclimate of its own cultural output, and a lot of it is amateur, and that is the same in the outlying villages as well. We've heard as part of this process a lot from Villages in Action, which is incredibly important. And then if you just come down from Axminster, you go to Seaton, and again, Seaton Gateway. They put on all sorts of really interesting stuff there. Again, already, probably the biggest phenomenon that's been in the arts in the last decade has been these live transmissions from the National, the RSC, wherever else. They're absolute game changers. And I think, we always have to bear in mind that where we live, most people never go to London. And that's just the case. They just don't. It's incredibly expensive to go and see a play in London, just to get there, park there, stay there and pay for the ticket. So this is transformational. So to go to Bruce's point, you then come across to Honiton, which is why I mentioned the Octagon in Yeovil earlier. And unfortunately, the Octagon has more than 600 seater. I think the Beehive maybe 200 if you're lucky, something like that. So we don't have a venue that's got that critical mass, but we do have a number of quite big halls, or the Beehive in particular, that could form another kind of network potentially to bring acts down. I mean, it could be sort of C grade, by which I mean profile, not quality, comedy acts, for example. Again, I know in Axminster they do, sort of comedy club, that kind of thing. So there's potential for growth in all of these areas. I think the other thing, apart from the economic argument, which has to be made, and I say this as an old arts journalist from the 90s, that basically the arts sector grew up in the 90s and it realised it had to explain to Mrs. Thatcher how much VAT was being raised. And then she went, "Oh right, I understand. Yeah, so it is worth paying for the Arts Council after all." But I think the other argument for this is how many people then get trained in the arts through this. It becomes a virtual circle, who literally then become a supply for the technical side of the arts, or they can be performers or creators in their own right. And they blossom and the sector blossoms, not only here, but nationally as well. So, sorry, Chuck, I get a bit passionate about all this, but there's a lot to play for here. And, that cultural producer, if I wasn't being paid £3 million a year to be leader of the district council, I'd be applying for the cultural producer job tomorrow myself. Well, I almost certainly wouldn't get it. The other thing I'd want to say, I'm sure Nick didn't quite mean that the Thelma Hallmark Gallery has come out of a period of utter darkness into a recent era of high success. The Thelma Hallmark Gallery has always been rather amazing, but it's had a brilliant 3 years despite the pandemic. Thanks, Jeff.
£3 million.
Well, you can take many noughts off that, sadly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Paul. John Golding. John.
Thank you, Chair. If I may ask a question through you, really taking advantage of Holly being here. So I'm very conscious that adoption of the strategy and its fine ambitions is one thing, and it's went through your committee very easily. I'm sure Cabinet will adopt it, and then it will all focus on delivery. So I guess my question to Holly is, has she got any advice to us as to how we might best use a very ambitious strategy it effectively as a bidding tool? Because I'm very conscious that a cultural producer will be able to do some of the work, but there will need to be a lot more resources behind this if we're to deliver all those ambitions. So I wondered if you got any tips for us, Holly, while you're here with us.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, is that okay?
Please do.
So I used to run an organisation called Gloucester Culture Trust. I was the first chief exec, and they decided in Gloucester to set up a separate organisation. That isn't something we're recommending here particularly. I think there's an appetite for East Devon District Council to take on that leadership role, but my role was very much like this culture producer role in terms of connecting and facilitating and really championing a strategy, a place-based strategy. And I think I guess my advice would be, I think there are some things that you can go ahead with quite quickly, some quick wins. I think that build on, I think where it's really interesting is where it intersects with other strategies that you've got. So I think there are things you could do and that Ruth and her team could build on already, like continuing the ACE network or looking at the local cultural education partnership. So those kind of quick wins. And then I think in terms of the big funding bids, I think there is Charlie's absolutely right, that there is a kind of shift towards place-based funding. I think you just need to be quite ruthless about being kind of specific about what they're asking for in different funding bids and making sure that, because I think the strategy has got enough in there to be able to target different applications depending on what they're asking for. So that would be kind of one of my tips. And then my other tip is just that there's some brilliant partners out there. I think Paul just mentioned Villages in Action as a network. I think the Museums Development Group is a really good network. There's practitioners doing kind of specific projects around different areas and different art forms. And I think working with those partners really helps in terms of efficiency, because the cultural producer isn't going to be able to do it all at once, but actually if you can build on those kind of groups that are there, I think that's a good way to kind of get things moving quite quickly. And it shows you're talking to each other. Funders hate it if you're operating in silos. So I think if that partnership working is really important.
Brilliant, thank you. So okay, John. Cool, brilliant. Okay, we have one more hand up, and then we will go to the vote. Councillor Johns. Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree to some extent with Councillor Arnott's comments earlier about the fact that people go up to London, etc., to go to shows, go to art exhibitions, galleries, etc. As I said earlier, I actually work for an art charity, and we're based within Kennaway House at Sidmouth. As we're all painfully aware, due to the lack of housing that is now upon us, an awful lot of people during the pandemic sold up in London and moved down here. So with working for the company or the charity that I work for, I cannot tell you the amount of people that come through the door and say, it's so nice to find a gallery, so nice to visit. So you've got, the theatre just up the road, etc. in Sidmouth. You've got similar places all across East Devon. And actually, do you know what? Once people have moved down here, they want to find places to visit down here. They don't want necessarily to go back up to London. I get it every week when people come in, and we get people that come in, every couple of weeks, the same people to see different artwork, etc. So actually, I think that it's something that we should be pushing within East Devon, because people don't want to travel the way that they did before. They don't want to go back up to London to the big shows, etc. Why can't the big shows travel down here instead, which makes far more sense? And we have people, as I say, all the time. I go to the Thelma Hubert. I'm going there on Monday for the meeting, with 3 hats on, East Devon Town Council and work. So, it is something that I think that we should be promoting. I think as a council, it would be ridiculous not to promote it when there is so much across East Devon that is available for everybody, but they need to be aware of it, and if we can all work together to make sure that people are aware of it, then it's a no-brainer to me, to be perfectly honest with you, regardless of what my job is. So just thought I'd say thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And in that regard, I think when we're sort of talking about declarations of interest and that earlier on, we need to walk that line carefully, because you're clearly experienced and you know what you're talking about, and you've got a lot to bring to this. So we don't want the declarations of interest side of it moving you away from being able to do that. That's my view.
I don't want to get dragged over to standards because I've said something I shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Okie doke. Right. Thank you very much, Vicky. We will now move to the recommendation, the third one from before that we didn't vote on. Now Charlie's spoken to this, and we've all had a chat about it. So the recommendation we'll vote on now is that East Devon is that the Arts and Culture Forum endorses the culture strategy's proposal to provide additional resources to support the delivery of the strategy's action plan, and that the Cabinet recommend to the Council the funding for a cultural producer role. So if you're in favour, could you use your green tick? And if you are not in favour, could you use your red cross? And yellow hands for abstentions, I believe.
Okay, Chair, so I can see 8 green ticks, no abstentions and no votes against. So that's carried.
Thank you very much, Alethea, and thank you very much, committee. I'm just going to say a few words now before we move on to Ruth, who will talk about ACE. Just a few words about this committee going forward, because it may be that I have to leave the meeting halfway through Ruth speaking due to an unexpected commitment in the school where I work. But we are close to the end of the meeting anyway. So I just want to say a few words about this committee and what the future of it should be in my eyes. And I've discussed this with Charlie, and sort of moving towards the next meeting. So I think that it's got an important role to play in terms of overseeing the implementation of the Finnish culture strategy that we've heard so much about today. I think one of the issues with the committee up to now is that it has been a fairly passive experience. So people have come along, we've looked at what's going on, and then we've all gone away again. So I think we need to, at a forthcoming meeting, we'll look at our terms of reference and try and find a way where we can make this more of an active kind of meeting. So you've got the ACE forum, which runs alongside this group, which focus on the actual arts providers and gives them the networking opportunity and an idea sharing forum. But I think this forum has a pivotal role to play when it comes to overseeing and scrutinising the implementation of the new strategy. And it would just be great to get that from all partners and all parties present. So yeah, I think we have an important role to play, and maybe Charlie and myself will contact members in the meantime, and maybe just get some idea as to how we think we could be most useful as a group, aside from sort of scrutinising the new strategy. Okay, so that's my little bit. And please email me with any thoughts you have about anything. I mean, anything at all. So agenda item 10 is an Arts and Culture East Devon update from Ruth. Nick, I will just say, if I am not here when Ruth is finished, are you all right to end the meeting?
Yes.
And sincere apologies for that.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay, brilliant. I may well be. Okay, so thank you, Nick. I'll now hand over to Ruth Gooding.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you all for the support for THG and ACE, and thank you, Holly, for the cultural plan and all the work that the FEI team did. It's absolutely vital for us in terms of informing THG's future. It will feed into our business plan, our Arts Council application, and is absolutely vital in making the case for investment in THG. As Charlie said, we are actually a team of less than 3, and we were already pitching above our weight. ACE came in at a really pivotal time during the pandemic, where we had the opportunity to look across the district and go, what is needed, what is absolutely vital? And ACE is clearly vital, as is the role of THG. So the two run in complete tandem, and the cultural plan will really strengthen that offer. Apologies if you hear any noise. We're having fibre installed in the gallery, so it's kind of in and out. So I'll be really brief, Joe, so hopefully you'll hear everything I've got to say. I was actually just going to give a bit of an update on what THG's been up to, and then finish on just a little bit of an update on ACE. As you know, THG's role is not just the gallery, but it's district-wide. So we've been doing a lot of public art commissioning this year. So we've been working in Exmouth, Honiton and Cliff Valley on major public art commissions. We've been taking the Creative Cabin out into the Cliff Valley, working with Roots for Roots, talking to Pinhoe, Broadcliff and Cranbrook communities. We've been continuing our climate conversations programme, and we've been developing the garden at THG, which is now a space for reflection, creativity and engagement, contributing to our goal to become net zero. And we've been working with a garden designer based in Honiton. And we opened our exhibition, Devon Artist Network, which includes 50 artists and 30 makers in the shop, supporting the cultural ecology of East Devon through a selling exhibition. And the great news for us, and it's funny how the pandemic has thrown the programme up in the air, but actually it's landed in our favour. We had an exhibition plan for 2019 working with Ingrid Pollard, who's a Black artist who was looking at race and the natural environment. But she's just been nominated for the Turner Prize, and it actually fits within our 22 programme. So THG will have an artist by an exhibition by Ingrid Pollard at the same time that it's held at the Tate. So we're hoping that's going to be a real media moment for THG, not only just in the calibre of the artist, but also in demonstrating EDDC's commitment to EDI. My team and I have all just come out of EDI training where we've been talking about diversity and inclusion and intersectionality, and I think that we'll be really spearheading that for the council. So it's a proud moment in that regard. Looking to the 2023 programme, we're actually programmed up to 2025. So if anyone says they want an exhibition at THG, I'm afraid our dance card is full for the moment. But we've got some really exciting projects working with key partners as we always do. We're working with the Black Down Hills, and we're working with the University of Exeter, and we have continuing partnerships with our community organisations, Devon Carers, Rock Creative, and the Devon Recovery Learning Community. So I think it's really interesting how THG is operating, and as you all know, we chose to take two hats. We've got the THG and ACE, and they complement each other, but they are two separate entities, and so that's why the producer role is absolutely vital, because it's a huge role, hugely ambitious, and we think that if that producer role sits within the THG team, the team here can support that producer to hit the ground running, capitalise on us, but really, really look outward. And utilise THG as the cultural hub that we want it to be, and the cultural engine. So at the moment, the role of the ACE network is, or what it's been operating as, is simply the meetings, the 3 network meetings a year, and the 2 forums, of which this is. And then we have the champions. So we have our next in-person meeting at THG Gallery on Monday. But the role, as you saw within the deliverables within Holly's document, of the producer is absolutely vital in using the ACE network to deliver those, so that becomes the mechanism. So the ACE network will grow, and in that it will feed into the marketing ask, but also the fundraising ask. So I hope that gives a bit of a snapshot of where THG and how it fits within the jigsaw puzzle of the cultural offer of East Devon. Thank you.
You didn't rush that on my account, did you?
When I get excited, I speak rather quickly.
It was excellently, very informative, absolutely packed full of stuff, and very concise. But I hope you weren't rushing on my account. Do we have any questions for Ruth? You clearly get, just like Holly, you managed to get everything in there, all questions answered without them having to be asked. Excellent work. Okay. I think, therefore, that brings our meeting to an end. And I'd like to thank everyone for taking part. I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for all of the work they put in, for all of the items on the agenda today. Holly, and I know Ruth and Charlie will go. It wasn't really us; it was Holly. But everybody's contribution to this has been amazing. And it is, as I say, a quietly momentous moment for this, for the arts and culture offering of East Devon, because we're on the way to having a good one now, I think, which is great. So yeah, this brings our meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone for taking part, including members of the public, for their attendance. Can I remind you that until the Democratic Services team confirm that the live streaming or recording is stopped, you can still be seen and heard, and any comment may be recorded. Thank you very much, everyone.